Recording?
I
Okay. God damn.
yeah, I know. It's so nice to hear that. Now recording.
Our recording. Big
Uh,
brother, who's watching you? There's even a little bear. Was that you?
oh, that's the app. It's like I don't know what it
Our
is.
little icon is like a bear, just like dead staring at you.
It's a little creepy. Okay, you know what's creepier is it's called Craig.
Oh, Jesus
Click on
Christ.
it. It's called Craig, or you could see its name. It's called
Yeah.
Craig. Craig is your friend. Click on the here. I'm gonna put this in the chat real quick. It's in the general chat of this channel. If you click on it, it's the first thing that it says is Craig is your friend. Craig is and it just describes what it is. There's some weird graphic design though. It's just like a blank faced bear. Like hi,
Christ.
hi
Hang on.
guys.
What the
Anyway,
fuck?
while we're doing this, I'm gonna start uploading the other chats that we've had.
Yeah, I saw them. I can just
Oh, you could
I just
download
pulled
them.
right, I just pull the recordings from there. Okay.
Yeah, you could do that. Oh, good. So that way, are they still there? Are they still available? I was afraid that they would disappear after a while
I
because
mean,
they're
I
like
see
hundreds of megabytes.
a father's story, summer solstice, bullet in the brain. Are we missing one?
Oh,
Um,
no. That's okay. So
it's from a different thing. It's not from Discord, right? It's from
no, that's the Discord just chat room name. So for each one, I've been like creating one. I mean, I could just create one and call it chat or whatever, but I thought it would be cool to have like one for each, and then maybe like an idea is having is just putting a link to the YouTube upload or whatever upload for each channel, so you can go back to it here, or if you want to have a YouTube channel with all them together as well. So it's all kind of linked together. But I haven't done that yet because I haven't really done shit lately when it comes to doing anything with these files, which is why I'm like right now while we're talking, I'm gonna at least upload the audio to that Google Drive
Yo,
folder. I'm gonna do that real quick, but
Mike,
it's doing it right now. But
what's the matter, Finn? Finn just came in. You got a belly cramp, buddy? He'll be all
yeah,
right.
right.
Yeah, he's all right. Um, he's out there swimming. I guess he got a
Oh, okay.
cramp. All right. Well, this is a short little story. This is one that's almost. It's not really all that much longer than the poem we were talking about last time. Really, I mean, it's only 3 pages, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah,
Uh,
like 3.5, 4 page. Yeah, 3.5 pages. It's pretty
it's all
crazy.
all dialogue. It's all one
What
scene.
one of the
One scene
old?
summary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, old school. This is one of the first like stories we were sending each other back in the day. I
Hell
think I'm
yeah.
not sure how long
Yep.
ago this goes, but I'm
Right.
pretty sure it's basically
At
up
least
there
12
with
years. Man.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like up there with We Didn't and
Yep.
Stuart Diebeck, and there's a few others like Kind of Flying. I think it was kind of later. Hills, of
Uh,
course, like all these anomaly
Cathedral.
stories. Cathedral.
Um, Hills Like White Elephants.
They
Um,
all they, they all kind of occupy the same place in my head. Like these are like
Two,
one-off
Two
kind of.
Soldiers by Faulkner. Yeah.
Yeah,
These are ones. Yeah. This one's actually the most experimental, I think, out of all those. Really, one of the most experimental stories. You can give a young writer. Like, you want to show them the basics. You show them Hills Like White Elephant, which is kind of experimental in that it's all dialogue and it's all one scene. But you show them that, and you're like, okay, this is what you could do in 5 pages, and this is just two characters coming through a catharsis over something really dramatic in their lives. But
yeah,
usually, you show them something more like Cathedral.
It's
or
more, yeah, that's more like formal writing. It's there's less I don't know. How would you explain, like, how would you describe a story like Hills Like White Elephants and a story like Bullet in a Brain? It feels like you can't just tell somebody to go write that. Because if you give them Hills Like White Elephants, you're just going to get 4 pages of shitty dialogue back, as like a
right.
writing exercise. And this story, it's like, I don't even know where to fucking begin. Like, what are you going to get back? Like,
I don't know if you're
anyway,
gonna get
my point
anything
is,
back.
I'm with you. Cathedral is more of like a kind of like a formal, more formal classic. I don't know. It's like more of a normal story. I
Well,
should
if
say.
you're gonna teach somebody this is the basics of how you build a story, you give them Cathedral, and you tell them, okay, you have a stranger. You have two kinds of stories. You got stranger comes to town, and character goes on an adventure.
Hmm.
Stranger comes to town, which is um, what your average suburbanite knows a lot more than character goes on adventure. um,
Yeah.
you would be like, okay, the stranger is causing some sort of friction between the people that he's coming to visit. Whether it be um, a town, and you got your Clint Eastwoods, some dynamic in a town going on, uh, or and the stranger comes and upsets the balance, um, or you got two characters fall in love. Which is kind of another type of dynamic you could explain to a young reader or young writer is you got some kind of love triangle going on, and the love triangle is causing conflict between the characters on the stage, and you just get them all on stage and you see what happens. But
Yeah.
Bullet in the Brain is okay. Invent something that happens that acts as a like vehicle plot to deliver to us a totally unlikable protagonist and get us to fall in love with him, and think of some creative way to start a flashback, but it's the flashback um like holds tremendous relevance to framing the story as the story exists. And by the way, the protagonist dies. Like that's the plot of the story. He has to die
Not only do they die, he dies like on the halfway through the story, a little bit over halfway through
Right.
the story, 2 pages in on a 3.5
Yep.
page story. It's a
Yeah.
weird fucking story.
It's great, man. It's
Oh
great.
yeah.
And it's
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, it's totally unexpected. Uh because your protagonist always lives, right? Um
Mm-hmm.
and if he dies, somebody else becomes the protagonist. This story's like, no, Anders is the fucking protagonist, and I'm going to make you fall in love with him, um, even though he's being a total bastard. And
Even
I
when
hate to
he's
keep
when
bringing that. I hate to keep bringing that point up, but I just finished Catcher in the Rye, J.D. Salinger, Holden Caulfield, and it's like,
okay.
even though Caulfield's um, kind of, as you read him as a 35-year-old man, he's kind of like a punk kid. You still root for him. And I'm reading The Overlook by Michael Keneally right now. Just like I read like little detective novels between the real novels just to give my brain a break, and I can go through them in a day.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and you always root for Harmonious Bosch, or which is the name Harry Bosch is the name of one of his protagonists, and you always root for Raymond Chandler's characters. You always root for all these like so many of these novels. You root for the protagonist. You don't root for Anders, man. You kind of just like immediately hate him.
You don't
um,
root for him, but you kind of are laughing at him a little bit. Like
yeah,
it's comedy. It's like some weird dark comedy going on here. Like he's literally getting a gun shoved into his gut, and it's like, ooh, it tickled me, whoo,
yeah.
And the guy's like, one more fucking word, and
I'll
he
shoot you in
laughs
the
at him,
face.
and
Yeah,
so you're like, when I read this story, I'm thinking this is written like kind of as revenge porn at first, and then he gets shot in the head, right? Like there's the line when I guess when he's like, I'm sorry," even though he's laughing, and the guy's like, "All right," shoots him right in the fucking head, and then it goes into that whole like, this is what the bullet looked like when it was going through his head
Yeah.
precisely, and then this is what he was think. But before all that, this is what he was thinking of in brain. Like it says brain time, right? Like
Yep.
everything's very slow, and he had a lot of time to luxuriate in all of his memories. And what he didn't think about, and he does that we didn't thing, or what he didn't think, and it gives him all this characterization and backstory, and then. Eventually, it lands on where the memory he did think about, and of course that's delivered in like a very vivid scene and description. And so, like, so the way I think of it is like it might have just been like a fun, goofy little story, and then I, I guess because Tobias Wolff's a good writer, he's like, let me do something more with this, or that's just where his mind took him when he wrote this damn thing, and then, I don't know, like I don't know, like I gotta keep going
Maybe
back to that, like how the fuck did he write this?
maybe it was never Not's revenge porn. Maybe even the end is him trying to, because the end kind of seals the point. It's definitely a story with a point, you know.
Yeah,
The
definitely,
point kind of the
definitely.
point kind of over the top in some respects. It's nonetheless a true point, but the point is that this guy lost his capacity for love and his capacity for love of life, love of language, and how those two things are inexorably tied. And yeah, Tobias Wolff probably did have critics that made him, wonder, man, like maybe these
Yeah,
guys out there, like these people who are the judges of language, they have no love of language. They have no love of story. They have no love of
right,
character. They probably have no love in their lives.
right,
That's a lot of the guys who become critics. They become it because they can't create. And they can't
right.
create because they have no love of creation.
Yeah, it's part of.
But
Yeah, you're right. Like it gets to that point where his love of language is like kind of sown and like it's all unraveled before then, but it gets to that point where he was just a kid and he was like just enamored by that turn of phrase they is. um but yeah, it's like a fucking, he's stuck to landing, like what a
that
beautiful
was
way to end
gorgeous.
the story.
And by the way, I don't know which version you read, but
I
I've
read the
been
one with all the
teaching it.
typos.
Is that the one that
You
I
must have,
sent you way back when?
yeah, you must have
Or
transcribed it back in the day or something,
I don't know, but I
or
read.
copied and pasted it from some website.
Yes, that's right. There is a typo in that version. In the one I sent. Well,
Not to be
I
all
just
Anders
read.
on your ass.
Tobias Wolff, by the way, was somebody who was constantly like editing his work and changing it. Even after it was published, he'd edit it and edit it. So the version I read
Oh,
had,
really?
had. So if you go on the New York Times right now and read it, you're gonna find a slightly different version. It doesn't start with Anders couldn't make it to the bank before 5 o'clock, so naturally there was a line. It starts with the line was endless.
Wait, what?
Yeah, go look at it on that
I'm looking at it
line.
now.
So that's different. Um,
Is that the only thing different?
no, there is something else different. If you scroll to the end, you'll notice that he started naming some of the kids who were at the baseball game. Um,
Oh no. Not sure
yeah,
how I feel about that, man.
I don't like either of the edits.
Oh my god.
You seeing it?
Yeah,
It's
I'm
like
looking at it now.
why are you naming them? What significance do these fucking kids have? What is the significance of their names? Their names don't mean anything to the story. Anders is the story. Um,
Right, it takes the kind of takes the focus away from him and his obsession with and that one boy who he never saw again in his life, but the words kept ringing in his head. It doesn't really make sense to kind of add extra detail. But you know
yeah,
what? I understand that impulse. I've been there. It
yeah, you
sucks that it
have.
happened to this story though. Shit.
Yep. Yep. It's so much better the way that I have it in my save file. But which, sometimes you just gotta let things go. You just gotta let things be. Nothing's ever gonna be perfect. But um but there does come a point where you can no longer add anything to make it better. And that's for me,
Yes.
as soon as I send it out, I kind of feel like I'm there. I'm really close to there. If there's any edits that are gonna make it work, it's gonna be slight edits, or
Yeah.
the thing just needs to be something totally different that's unlike anything that I sent before,
Right. The sending out is a hard kind of thing to come back from. Like I don't think I've ever truly come back from it in terms of taking people's comments and like implementing them, or just taking their comments and like digesting them and like continuing the revision process. Like it loses
Yeah.
some magic when you send it out, unless you decide this shit ain't working at all. I'm just gonna like take one good thing about it and then write a new poem or new story or
Right,
whatever
right.
you are. But yeah, so there's definitely something to be said for that. And I think you probably are just more, well, I don't know if I'd say you were more quick to send out, because you are pretty careful with what you send out. I think probably because you're hopeful. Um, that something might turn
Yeah,
around. But
I
yeah,
get
it's a
over
good
that.
point.
But
It is better when you just send shit out and like move on to the next thing, because that's the best way to get better. Is just to keep let something die, or let it sit for a while, because sometimes, well, this is also true, sometimes it can come back, if you are the type of person that would revise something, like Tobias Wolff, like a crazy person that like is obsessed with things. Like you could get re-obsessed with some things, not always in a great positive way, but sometimes it could work, if it's something that's like kind of forgotten about.
I mean, you wrote My Old Man uh, two different times, both about your father, but both totally different stories about him. But probably from the same
Right.
impulse.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, that was a weird poem. At his best, it was. You're thinking of
at its best.
Bukowski's poem, but
Yeah, you're right.
at
You're
its
right.
best, yeah. So that one, just to get off on this tangent even further, the first one I just wrote, um, early days, um,
Yeah.
and it was back in the day when I would just rewrite the same poem over and over again, and so the reason why I called the next one at its best also is because I had the same energy going into it, and I think I was probably rewriting it. To be honest with you, Craig, that poem, I actually remember the act of writing it. I don't remember what the fuck I was writing about, but it was nothing like the end product. I remember being at FAU,
Really?
sitting yeah, I was at FAU. It was like noon. I was sitting at those tables outside of Starbucks by the breezeway. And I think Braylick would like jumped me, and I got mad at her because I was in the middle of the poem. Like she came upon me, and I was like, leave me alone. And so it fucked up that draft of it, and I had like part of the draft there, and then I rewrote, and I started writing it later that day, and I wrote it like it went in a completely different direction. And so like I gotta find it, dude. It's on paper, so it's like and it's a bunch of fragments on a paper. It's like pretty cool. But that one was, so that's a little
Finding time to
different
be
than
alone,
like
man.
sending up. Yeah, yeah. That's a little different than like sending a poem out. Like I did send a poem called that out, but I brought the same energy to another like a different type of another poem that was like about the same thing, really, but it had a bunch of different scenes in it, and so it's like a kind of a different thing than just going back and editing an old dead thing, or something that you had just sent out and you have a bunch of other people's voices in your head fucking it up.
At some point, we're just going to have a podcast where all we talk about is like the elements of writing, and one of them is definitely going to be like the desperate need to be alone, to find some place to just totally be
Well,
deprived from
that's a pretty
any
easy
stimulus.
lesson to learn. Don't fucking
Yeah,
write by coffee shops or in public, like.
or in libraries, or at your house, or your family or your kids live, or where your
Even
parents
if
live, or
even if
or
people
anybody
around
who
you, Even if the people around you, like, can notice what you're doing and think it's weird enough to leave you the fuck alone, you're still gonna end up
Yeah.
writing about coffee shops and libraries. You know,
Yeah.
you're gonna start looking around like, what the fuck should I say? Ooh, the heat of the
Sometimes it
coffee
works.
in my hand.
Sometimes
Yeah,
it doesn't.
sometimes it works. It's kind of a one trick pony, though. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. For me,
You have a poem that's all about Panera Bread.
that's
Well,
the
it
poem
fucking
I'm
works.
thinking about, dude.
Yeah.
And I kept trying to do it over and over again. I was like, I gotta go to Starbucks. I gotta go to Dunkin' this time.
There's this
No, I did one with McDonald's once, and I was like, all right, I jumped the fucking shark. I can't write about McDonald's or Panera Bread anymore.
in A Movable Feast. Hemingway has this scene where he's writing this story, and this guy sees him out in public. They're at a coffee shop, and he just intentionally does everything he can to ruin Hemingway's concentration while he's writing this thing. And
Well,
so
think about
Hemingway
what
just
Hemingway was doing. He brought a fucking typewriter out in public and he's going,
he was writing on a notebook, but
oh, okay, okay.
it doesn't matter. Like people see you engaged in some material that has nothing to do with them. Like the worst
Yeah.
was when I was like after FAU, I was living at my parents' house because I had nowhere else to go, and my dad was sleeping on the couch because he, for some reason, he was always up during he was up during the night, and he would sleep. He'd go to sleep at like 5 a.m. like you, John, and
Yeah.
I'd be over there
Yeah.
trying to like I'd be waking up at 5 a.m. because I was trying to work hard labor, and I'd try to write something before I had to go run over to fucking Trump and start mowing grass. So he'd be laying down, and I'm like 2 feet away, banging on the keyboard, bump, 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 and he'd like stick his head up like a turtle and be like, "What you writing over there? What you writing? You writing a novel? Can I read
Yeah.
it?" Like,
That's
Dad, I'm not writing anything now. You know,
that's the
like
beauty of
goddamn.
like being married or engaged to a writer. You know not to fuck with somebody when they're in the middle of writing something. You know, like if Laura's writing, well, I am worse at this than she is with me, but I've gotten better. But like in the early days when I was like super serious writer guy, um, like if I was writing, man, it's sacred. You know, it's like you can't talk. You know, that most you get a finger or something. And even reading kind of is like that too. Like you kind of want to be, and you're in the story. You want to like kind of keep going, and going, and going. But that you could be a little bit more forgiving with reading, I guess. Anyway,
Or
the
just
whole
people.
the whole idea is to get the fuck away from people when you're writing. It's tough.
I'll save all the stories when we make this just the topic of discussion. But
All
yeah,
right, we should talk about the story.
I mean, it lends itself to just you know to discussions about criticism and discussions about what it means to be a writer and what it means to be a creator and what it means to be a critic. I mean, it's again not to keep bringing them up again and again and again. But Laraka used to tell us not so much with this story, but with The Destructors by Graham Greene, another story we
Hmm.
used to talk about back in the days. By the way, another great story for giving a young writer. Here's the template for what a story is supposed to look like. Probably even better than Cathedral because almost all of it takes place in scene.
I think I've only read that
But
story like once or twice, and I still like remember just a bunch of kids like hanging off of like the pieces of this house like monkeys, and like this scene of them destroying the house. It's crazy,
yeah,
man. It's
it's the
crazy. I didn't even
cousin of
really
this
study it,
story.
dude. I mean, let's be real. I mean, well, I did. I do remember our conversations a little bit about it, those workshops. But yeah. Anyway.
It's the cousin of this story, and that they're both about the same things. They're both about people who take delight in destroying others, cutting others down. Um, Graham Greene was a more practical guy, a little bit older from a different generation than Tobias Wolff. Tobias Wolff, a lot more experimental in some respects. So of course, he wrote a more experimental story, but both essentially about the same thing. It's just people who, um, it's a lament on criticism, is what it is. But here's the point I wanted to bring up. but neither Tobias Wolff nor Graham Greene forgets that they're ever telling a story. Sorry, my fire alarm is going off, but
It's okay. I barely heard it.
but yeah, it's
Make sure
just
your
a
house is not
story.
burning down, by the way.
No, it's not. It's super sensitive. Leo's cooking some bagels or something.
Okay.
Pizza. But yeah, and it's great for that. It's something that this again is a story, dude. At some point, John, whenever you're teaching in person again, give this story to your students and be like, I want you, like, just give it to them the day of class. Don't let them read it beforehand. Give it to them the day of. Be like, guys, we're gonna perform this as a class, and I'm gonna give you guys a writing topic to respond to with, and have
Right.
them perform it, and just see how surprising and how engaged they get.
So
If for
how
no
do
other
you?
reason, then they get to tell their professor, "Hey, do you want to suck my dick?" you know,
Yeah, that is a
which is
line of
always fun.
dialogue. Hey,
It's
this is
great.
literature, okay? It's okay. It's okay. It's a
No, it's
fucking
great.
literature. Hey,
They
by the way, like you have mentioned this is what you do in the class, and you do it for Hills too. What do you
Yes,
do? Do you pick certain students out, or do you like
yeah.
kind of make it a group
I
thing?
picked two of the better ones, two of the ones that I know are going to. It's not something I
Like,
would give like the first day or anything. I'd give it later on in the semester after we've covered so many of the basics. Right about the time where it like they're starting to pull away because they know what the class is and they know what they're supposed to be doing and they know
mm-hmm.
what an essay
Yeah,
is and know what ethos and pathos and logos are and what a counter argument is and a rebuttal and how to stick to the what a thesis is and all that interesting shit.
yeah.
Once they start
You
pulling
teach them
away,
everything you need to teach them for composition. You're like, here's a fucking story about a guy getting shot in the head.
yeah. I mean, you have to break away from composition at some point. Like that has to be what the purpose of the class is. The purpose of the class can't just be here's what an essay is supposed to look like.
Yeah,
Because it's 16 fucking weeks long. I
dude.
mean, these kids
I
start pulling away after week 8. Sometimes after week 4. Um,
Exactly. Sometimes the first day. And guess
yeah,
what,
sometimes
Greg?
the first day.
I took comp one. Do I remember anything about it other than the cool part about it, which is
No,
when Braylick would take us to the Pod Apple Slough and have us write about what we saw? Like that was the coolest thing, man. If I did, if I were me now, I'd probably be like, man, it's fucking hot out here. I don't want to do this, or whatever.
of course.
But as like an 18, 19-year-old, you're not used to that in school. So it felt special. And that's probably what this is. Cause this is this is kind of a dark story. I mean, the facts of the story are dark, but it's like kind of a fun, light. It's a fun
There's
story,
definitely
which
a
is
comedic
not
moment.
it doesn't feel academic at all.
No.
It has, do you want to suck my dick as dialogue in it, and you're going to read that in class. And so that's going to you're going to be the cool teacher, man, when you give this story. And not
I'll
just
never
because
forget.
of, the gratuitous nature of the story, but because it's not just a stupid kind of fun story. It actually hits home. Like it has a it moves you.
It has all these deeper implications, and students recognize that, and they recognize that it's a critique not just of critics but of English professors. A lot of English professors are like this. I like Anders.
Yes. Yeah, man.
They're there to just collect a check, and they've lost. I mean, because we talk a lot about how stories become universal, and in the story that I want to talk about next time is going to be the antithesis of this. But this is really a story about a guy who um, has become hardened and jaded to his life. And the only pleasure that he gets anymore out of life is tearing others down. That's it. And I'm sorry, but there's a lot of people like that in academia. There's a lot of people like that everywhere. There's a lot of people like that who are working at coffee shops. There's a lot of people who are like that are working, his nurses, a fucking shit ton of nurses like that, a shit
Yeah.
ton of doctors, and they've lost their passion in life. Is really what it amounts to. They've
Yeah.
lost their passion. And Tobias Wolff, that's about um, you know, a really jaded remark on what would what would save this guy, what would make him not a jaded person. And the truth is, nothing. A
A
bullet in the
bullet,
fucking
a
brain.
bullet in the
And
fucking brain.
somebody probably told, like, he probably, like, that was probably somebody's sardonic answer to that question. He's like, you know what? I wonder if I could tell that story.
Yeah,
And
and the
while
way
the
you
bullet's
describe
passing through his
Wolf,
brain,
he seems like the type who would, do it as an
yeah,
exercise, you know?
100%. There's a great movie
Yeah.
about him called "This Boy's Life" with Robert De Niro and Leonardo DiCaprio. It's an even better book. It's a great fucking book. But he was
Yeah.
actually, like older on, like you see pictures of him on the jackets of books, and he looks like this old kind of, he's bald and he's got a little gray mustache. He looks like the
Mm-hmm.
scholarly professor. But he was actually, a rough kid growing up. He was a lot more like
Really?
me and you. Yeah, a lot more like me and you than you'd probably, think. He was somebody who basically dropped out of fucking school, stopped going, was drinking heavily, was hanging around, little thugs and shit, and doing dumb shit, and
And
had a
what
real,
writing saved his life or something?
yeah, he was always somebody who loved reading and loved writing.
Yeah.
He had a real bastard of a stepfather, which is what this boy's life is about. This really sadistic fucking sack of shit. I'll send you a funny clip of Robert De Niro trying to play his stepfather. But
What do you mean
uh,
trying to? Is it bad or?
it's a great scene. It just suffers from being nonfiction, I think, is the problem with the movie. Might as well say better able to save it. I feel like the last line of the book should have been, I was the only way that I could escape my parents or my family is to go to join the army. And all I needed when I was in the army and had my freedom was a war. Be careful what you wish for, because he did go to war.
How?
And,
How?
and
When?
I
What
really,
war did he go? Oh, do you
uh,
remember what war it was? I'm
Korean,
looking at
I
his age.
think.
He's like 75 or some shit. So.
Yeah, I think he was in either Vietnam or the Korean War. He had another book called The Brackets Thief, which is really good. He hasn't really talked much about um, the war, at least from what I've read. He does have another. I think he has another book that's almost unreadable called. Fuck was it called? It's all about his time in the war, but I could not, for the fucking life of me, even read the damn thing.
Is
Tobias
it in
Wolff.
in Pharaoh's army or
Yeah,
some
I
shit?
can't. I couldn't even fucking read that thing. So
Yeah.
maybe it's worth a read, but I felt like where Tobias Wolff really shined is in his short stories. Honestly, this boy's life is really great, but um, and this, by the way, this is Magnus Opus. This is his best work. This Bullet in the Brain. I've never read anything else like it. I've never seen anything approximating it. I've
Yeah.
never seen.
I was gonna
Uh,
ask, like, are any of his other short stories like this? And obviously this is a very special and like unique story, but like a scene and then something happens that changes the whole story and how it's written and structured. Like the structure of this story kind of like is cut in half when he gets shot in the head.
yeah,
Does he write like that way in other stories, or is it
no,
like kind of?
no, it's a lot more. Again, it's a lot more traditional. It's a lot more like he's written some other great stuff. And that composition I sent you, that compilation, there's a bunch of Tobias Wolff I think the closest is probably Powder. Powder is also.
You're right.
You ever read that one where he's talking about his
No, I
dad?
haven't.
Oh man, go read Powder after this. Really, it's just as short, if not shorter. Um, and really, really like it's up there with Ron Carlson's The Kind of Fine. Powder is.
Yeah. All right. Are
So
you
maybe
saying
that's
powder or power?
Powder.
Powder.
Powder. He's talking about snow. Uh,
Yeah. I might have read this story a long time ago.
yeah,
Yeah, I
but
read
as
this
far as
story, I'm
Bull
pretty
the Brain
sure.
goes, never read anything more experimental that I can think of off the top of my head. Not in terms of plots, not in terms of like let me. So the way that this plot moves. Sorry, I got a little bit of a cold. He gets shot in the
Okay.
head. So it's all seen. He gets shot in the head.
Mm-hmm.
Then the narrator starts talking to you about the path of the bullet through this guy's brain, and he starts delivering um tiny little pieces of exposition, almost like little mini scenes of Anders' life. You know, being in war demonstrations, uh, the last words of
Right.
his like the last words of his mother, being that she should have stabbed his father in his
So
sleep.
much, man. There's like so much in these few
Um,
paragraphs.
yeah, his first lover and the weird things that she would say about sex and her carnality and
Mm-hmm.
seeing a woman jump to her death. So it's all these little like blips of this guy's life. And it really actually makes you start. And by the way, it's again, talk about Sharon Olds and the importance of images. Like the image, like once you see the images, you understand. Like there's a reason that this guy is jaded. It's because he had a
Yeah.
fucking hard life, man, and life never stopped. You know,
Yeah.
um, life never stopped with him.
Yeah, it
And
is it is kind of like the pebble skips on the water, man. It's an image after an image until it finally sinks and you get that scene at the end and you're just in the scene. Like his last thought was this scene basically on the baseball field. But yeah, just to go back to your point, it's just crazy how fast this it's I say fast. I mean there's like a lot of information in just a
yeah,
page. All that you just described is in one page.
yeah.
Um so you get such a great picture, and like you said, it kind of characterized him as this guy who, like a lot of people, it's a very universal story, had
Mm.
some fucked up shit happen to him and, saw some fucked up shit. Um,
Everybody is the way that they are because of something. They're not that way just by nature. Nobody had a perfect life and ended up a total piece of shit. And
yeah,
you kind of have that, like, you kind of think that when you're young. You think that some people are just born total dicks and everything
yeah,
good in life happens to them anyways. But as you get older, you start to realize this is one of the marks of maturity is you start to realize everybody has a reason for being the way that they are. And you
right.
never really know until you know.
And
Um,
that's the trick the story plays on the reader. We are presented with a guy who is always an asshole, and he's always gonna be an asshole. Except he always wasn't an asshole, and he's not gonna be an asshole very soon because he's about to die. You know.
yeah,
So it
you
plays this
start, you
like
start to
kind
care
of
about them.
fucked up trick. What?
Yeah, you start to care about them by the last scene. You actually feel this great wash of pity because there was a time in his life that this guy was a kid, and he wasn't.
Hmm.
He actually wasn't a bad kid. He was a kid who was really considerate and he was really in love with language. That's why he chose the profession that he chose, and he, even as a young man, was somebody who believed in nonviolence and was willing. Like, how many people are out there willing to get their ribs broken in the name of nonviolence? with somebody who really had the courage of their convictions. Um,
Right.
just life wore them down, and so you're given this last scene. And that's also, it's the great thing of so much art. So much of art is, you would think that Michael Corleone was, or his father was always, this mass murdering piece of shit, but they weren't. There's a time when they were hopeful and wanted something better for their lives, and it's just, the way decisions that they made and their repercussions later on that led to things being the way that they are.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
and so much of our artwork, by the way, is also about that. A lot of people in the state of Florida think that these junkies are just pieces of shit and, are just out to use everybody and lie to everybody, and that they're, just waste of life. And so much
Yeah.
of our work is like they weren't always like that.
You know,
And
I've actually been struggling with you shed some light on some shit that I've been struggling with like writing about family and the darkest kind of unflattering moments. And I guess I forgot that ultimately it was about redemption. It's not, and I think I forgot it because I was like, oh, I just wrote these out of love, whatever. But really, I'm trying to redeem them. Like I'm trying to redeem my father when he, does this horrible thing, or I'm trying to redeem my mother for saying this horrible thing, or even my brother,
yeah,
for, you know, being an addict for what it made him, because they are all like to me they're beautiful, and it's not just that I love them, and that's part of the reason why I'm digging deep is because I love them, but it's also
yeah.
because they're redeemable, they're not monsters,
Well,
and I
they're your
think that's what
family.
you do too. Yeah, I mean they're my
So much
family, and I think
of
that's what you do too a little bit.
right. So much of why we do what we do is so people understand. Like the thing is, they couldn't deal with life, and the reason that they couldn't deal with life is because so many people out there are were total shit and convinced them that the way that they had to be was the way that they are. My father wasn't always essentially a pimp, you know, essentially this guy full of rage. It's just he felt like he had to, be this way because to be this way meant to be strong. And he surrounded himself with people that he thought were strong because he thought that he would, to be strong for your family means they'd reap the benefits of those rewards. They'd reap the benefits of having a house and having a car and having an education.
Mm, yep.
And so you can see the kind of reasoning that goes into it. It's the same, your dad learned so much about cars because he thought that it would be beneficial for his family. And he knows more about cars than anybody I've ever fucking met in my life.
Oh, trust
I've
me,
never,
it's helped, man. You've never
it
changed an
helped.
alternator on the side of the road in the desert without your
Yeah.
father telling you every step of the way what you got to do.
Yeah. I mean,
um,
I've never seen a person able to diagnose a car just by you telling them how the engine sounds or something, or some sound that the thing is making. He doesn't get to
right.
look at the physical thing. He could just sit there and imagine it all in his head.
Yeah, he's a
And in
good
so many ways,
theorizer.
that was beneficial. In so many ways, also though, life isn't a car. Life is this other complex thing. But my point being,
Yep.
that that uh, that you're showing the world their beauty and their ugliness, so they understand that these people are people, and so that they can look at these people with a little bit more kindness, with a little bit more compassion, with a little bit more understanding, to understand that, my brother wasn't just this guy, he was also this kid who was great, and when it went miserable, like we all did everything that we could to help him. and
Yeah.
and it still fucking failed. And so we're doing it both for the people who are also going through it and the people who aren't, who would never look at these guys twice.
Yeah.
They need to see these people and understand. And Tobias Wolff, I think that's the other reason. He's not just writing a criticism of criticism. He's also trying to be like, listen, so this guy was a great kid at one point, and it's a shame actually that the way his life ended was being shot in the fucking head because um he was never going. He never got a chance to change. He never got a chance to see what the bullets showed him, which is that you're not going to be on this fucking earth forever. You're only going to be here for a certain amount of time. That time's probably a lot less than you think. We're all barrel diving towards the same outcome. The same infinite zero, and we all think that we have this all this time. Anders didn't. You know, Anders had nothing. He had
Oh
nothing.
my gosh, Craig,
I'm
killing me,
sorry.
man.
I always do this. Yeah, I always like.
About an hour
bring
in, I'm just like, yeah. All right, Craig.
Well, I
I'll
mean, you
see you
gotta
later.
you look at it and you
No,
go,
but
it's
Craig, I
beautiful in
mean,
spite of that.
almost it's I mean to take a positive view of this story. You're right. I mean, you're obviously right. I'm not saying you're wrong, and I'm just saying, damn it, man. Uh, um, like this guy wasn't gonna get. He was never gonna have this realization. The only way he's gonna have this realization is through this story, which he'll never be able to read. It's not just what he was thinking about when he died. It's all the things he wasn't that the author knew, that humanized him. It's all the things he forgot. Really, his first loves. He forgot when he became that bitter person. And maybe if he would have remembered, he wouldn't be that way. The line that stuck out to me, he did not remember when he began to regard the heap of books on his desk with boredom and dread, or when he grew angry at the writers for writing them. Like
Yeah,
he didn't remember that. Like that's real. That he's not technical. Like that's the writer giving us his characterization. And I guess that's kind of the tragedy of it, is that he was never gonna get there anyway. And almost in a way, the
no.
bullet in the brain was his salvation.
I mean,
You
that's the
know.
thing about Tobias Wolff. Tobias Wolff, very jaded, dude. Very, very like. I remember early on, LaRocca would always be like, "Dude, don't just read Tobias Wolff. Don't idolize him right now. Idolize him in 10 years, because if you read him right now, he's too severe,
Okay.
way too
Yeah.
severe, way too jaded. Read some Raymond Carver, read
Right.
some Jonathan Franzen, where even though it's snarky and it's sardonic, things always end up for the best at the end of the book. But goddamn, like Tobias Wolff, is just always barrel diving towards characters doing the wrong thing. Like the point of the story is always, that I mean,
I
Powder
mean,
in on a kind of a good note, but Fly Boys. Point of that story is you got to cut people out of your life sometimes. You know, um, Two
powder.
boys and a girl is the point of that story is sometimes evil does win. Um, Bullet in the brain. The point of this story is, yeah, Anders was a great kid at one point, but um, we're all on this planet for a limited amount of time, and sometimes people just, it's a lot less time than you think. Unfortunately, if I was going to boil all this stuff down to a sentence, of course,
Right.
there's some more I sent you, but it's always this like really bitter point. It's always this really severe points, and that's
Well,
Tobias Wolff.
I'll
That's fine. Next
I'll
week
give.
we're gonna we're gonna talk about something happier.
Okay, I gotta give him this. Like the way it's written was written with a lot of, especially the end, a lot of tenderness and fun.
Oh
Like
yeah, man.
he's fighting against the severeness of the story. You know, like a guy getting shot. This guy's an asshole. He doesn't realize he's about to die. You know, all this stuff. But it's so playful, and you know, he
Yeah.
obviously Tobias Wolff was kind of having fun with the character and the scene and everything. It
What if
almost
what
goes
if it's
against
like
like the point of the story, the tone of it, you know?
so the first half is like, what if an asshole at a bank talked his way into getting shot in the fucking head?
Yeah,
You know, this critic who was totally deserving of it. And Tobias Wolff got there and was like, well, that's not really a story. It's just somebody getting, what they deserve. What if this guy saw a moment in his life, that made him realize that he wasn't always this way, that he missed the point of his own life. Um, and he's like,
yeah,
well, then who cares if he realizes it by the end or not? What matters is that the reader understands it by the end. And
yeah.
uh,
And that's the genius of the story. That's a genius move, you know. It goes outside of
100%,
this guy, you know, a little bit.
100%. So next week, I know I've sent this to you a million times. I know you've read it before. I don't think you've ever gotten it, but I think you'll get it this time. I want you to read Knoxville, Tennessee, 1915 by James Agee. 5 paragraphs. Um, almost poetry. Somewhere like it exists somewhere between poetry and nonfiction and fiction. I don't know where it exists, but I have a lot of fun. That actually became an opera. I don't know if you've ever heard it. You should listen to it.
Really.
Dude,
It's I read this I'm trying to remember, it was like 3 or 4 years ago. Is that when he sent it out?
yeah, dude, read it again, and
Yeah.
I'll send you the link to the song too. I have a lot to say
Okay.
about it. It's something else. It's something that I would use to bridge like ENC and what an essay is, and the more artistic and creative side of things like Tobias Wolff, a Bullet and Brain.
All right,
But
cool.
I just
I'll kind of like I'll try to dig in a little deeper with this one. Um, as far as like the language goes, maybe since I remember it being very poetic. I'm struggling to remember what actually happens in this story, but fuck it,
that's
I'll
the
read it
great
again.
thing. That's the great thing about it. Nothing happens. It's just it's
I'd
this
love
kid,
to hear you argue a story where nothing happens.
dude.
Argue for a story where nothing happens.
When you can write like James Aggie, it doesn't matter. I feel like it's something that young writers need to read. I'm so glad that I read it.
Mm.
It changes what I think about stories and what I think about writing and what I think the purpose is of writing. Nobody else could have written this except for James Aggie. And
Seems to be
um,
a theme we're coming across here.
yeah,
You
you
know,
know,
when it comes to the great writing, it's like it's completely personal. You know, it's completely just kind of a flash in the pan almost. I mean,
yeah,
not to take away the mastery of language and you know all the years it takes to write to that level, but once you get there, man, you still can get lucky, and it can get and it just goes above and beyond what even you think you're capable of. Um,
damn right.
yeah, and I shouldn't talk about these guys like they're some aspiring writer, but
I mean,
that's
we're
you
all
know
just monkeys. We're all just apes, like
right.
crawling over a dung heap on the planet. And
I know
anything that we accomplish is, it's
when you
like
put when
percent
you put
talent, 3%, preparation and determination, and like
yeah
95% fucking luck. Honestly, 95% like just the passion of the moments and something. Call it the muse of God or whatever you want. Just
right
pouring through us. But
yeah man.
I really think if you read it and tell yourself like the story about something, and there's something about this that Craig thinks, you know. Oh, okay, so you want to see something even more experimental than Bullet in the Brain? This is it. This is the single most experimental. story that's ever existed. It's 5 paragraphs long. Um, it's about crickets and hoses, you know.
Right.
And it was written so beautifully that um, Samuel Barber turned it into a fucking opera. So it turned into an opera song. People wrote. Um,
That's a weird one, man. It usually goes to like movie or I don't know,
this one
a
went straight
play
to
or
song.
something.
I mean, 'cause that's usually where the art form lends itself to becoming.
Yeah,
As
like the
poetic as
base.
this language is in this story, I don't know if you could turn it into a song. Samuel Barber and James Agee bent language, more towards a lyrical, uh, just to see how much music they could hear. And it's about, by the way, it's about music. I'll tip my hand a little bit. This is definitely a short story about the music of life and the music
Okay.
of what's going on around them. But I think it's about other things too, and I want to see if you can pry open what those other things are that Seymour or that James Aggie's trying to talk about. I'll be interested because I've given this to. By the way, here, I'll tip my hand a little bit more. I always give this to my
Let's just talk
ENC
about it
students.
right fucking now. Let's go.
No, it'll be a little interesting experiment for me because I give this to my 18-year-olds after they figure out how to identify what a thesis is and what a thesis statement is, to read something and find the meaning of it and write about the meaning of it in a compelling way.
Right.
I'm interested in seeing uh, what somebody my own age and who does this for a living thinks the point of this piece of art is. So we'll talk about that. And then
What the point
then
of this piece of art
yeah,
is, or what the point
what
of
the what's
art
the
is?
no
Art is?
what is the thesis of 1915 Knoxville, Tennessee? James Aggie. What is the point? Why did he write this? What is he trying to get at? You know, if the
Fucking
point of
homework.
if the point of Tobias Wolff and Bullet in the Brain is that Anders was never going to figure this out, was never going to figure out that he missed the point of his own life, all the great things that he loved about his profession and about why he got into criticism in the first place, and and that he lost his passion and he lost his love. But you, the reader, who are reading this, if hopefully you'll find out what the meaning of your own life is, and that you won't lose the passion for the things that you do. If that's the point of that, then what's the point of James Aggie and Knoxville, Tennessee, 1915? Why this moment in his life when he was 6 years old, I think?
All
Why
right.
this moment? So I'm interested. I'm just interested. You don't have to write anything down. I'm just interested in what you think.
Yeah, I'll think about it when I read it again.
All right.
What do you wanna meet again? Because I don't know if we're gonna be able to do this on Sunday.
Yeah, you're gonna be down here, right?
Yeah.
Or I don't know. We'll figure it out when you're down here.
Yeah, I guess so. All right.
I'll probably make Leo and Laura listen to the opera. And we'll talk about it.
I'll try to
Anyways,
read it at least before then. But
are,
yeah.
are you guys gonna be at your dad's house?
No, we're gonna well, I don't know what we're doing Sunday, but we're coming down on Saturday. We're gonna stay in Melbourne with Dave and Sarah,
All right.
and then Sunday is kind of up in the air. We were gonna camp out, but now Laura's not sure because Leo's like it's hot as fuck and it's raining.
It is unbelievably hot. It is always
Um,
raining. Oh, yeah. There's a malaria outbreak going
Fucking
on right
malaria.
now.
What am I doing going to Florida? Fuck Florida. DeSantis and malaria. DeSantis like an oil spill that'll never fucking clear itself for decades. Malaria is just, malaria. What the fuck? What are we
Hey,
doing in Florida?
you want to say hi to Finn?
Yeah, what's up? Hey, Finn. Finn, it's John. I'm the crazy guy from the pictures on the wall.
He knows who you are, dude.
I always assume you forget me, Finn, for some reason, but I know.
How can you forget you? You're on every wall in this house.
Hey, what's up, Leo? How you doing?
You're like his grandfather.
Is Finn right there? Is Finn and
Yeah,
Leo there?
I just walked into his room to say hi.
He's
All
probably
right.
displeased that I'm talking to him right now because
He loves you.
he probably doesn't. Yeah, he's probably like, "What the fuck is going on? Why is Craig talking to John on the phone?"
All right, so we'll be getting Finn, I think, and then we'll head over. We'll figure it out from there.
Oh yeah.
All right, man.
All right.
buddy.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, man.
And
I love you, man. I'll talk to you soon.
send me this clip and the other, or send me this recording and the recording we did last week, and I'll start making a YouTube channel.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, all they are, right? Real quick, all they are is just the audio.
Recordings.
I
Yeah,
was thinking,
fun.
like my intention was to put like some kind of music, like for a father's story. I was gonna put the first part of '97 Bonnie and Clyde up into the chorus, like a minute and a half or whatever. I thought that would be funny.
I don't know, I don't know how YouTube is about. I don't really care though, as long as they don't take it down.
That's what I'm worried about too. Like,
just save two recordings. Save one recording without it, and use another recording, another saving, and
I just don't know if I want to fucking get that deep in the weeds with it. I already like uploaded all the files so far. I just did that today, like the last two, and then I'm gonna do this one now into that folder, the Google Drive folder. Do you have it? Can you get to that?
Send it to me right now, and I'll be fine. I'll figure it out.
All right. I will do that. I'll talk to you later, man.
You guys try to stay safe, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Right. Love you, man. Bye.
All right, bye.
Where's your fun time? Where's the moon? Bubby, sit down. Mommy, you get correct.
You don't need to get me. You don't need to get me.